Chapter 17:26. In the end, Mo Zaichen didn't confess. Luo Qingchen waited for a long time, but Mo Zaichen didn't say anything. He wasn't as free as he was that day at Ling Luo's private club. There were many indescribable emotions in his eyes. In the end, he just softly patted her head, as gentle as before. Wait for me. Before you give me an answer, I'll give you an answer first. This was Mo Zaichen's promise to her, a promise of 60%. So, can we still drink together tomorrow? Luo Qingchen pursed her lips, feeling a bit aggrieved. After all, she had agreed when he confessed to her. But now, Mo Zaichen didn't. But if she jumped out of her identity, she felt that the person in front of her was that outstanding. Because he wanted to use a Mo Zaichen who wasn't related to anyone else to accept her confession. I heard you say that you're taking her to school tomorrow. Mo Zaichen looked at her and said, send the two little friends off tomorrow and we'll go see a movie. When she was with Mo Zaichen before, he liked to take her to the movies on weekend. When she asked him, he said, the atmosphere in the movie theater is very good because you're always focused on watching. You didn't even notice when I secretly held your hand. What do you want to see? Luo Qingchen casually picked up her phone and her eyes fell on a movie title. When she wanted to say it, Mo Zaichen spoke first. The 3 years that we missed. How did you know what I wanted to say? Luo Qingchen was surprised, but there was a smile that was hard to hide on her lips. There was an indescribable feeling of telepathy spreading from the bottom of his heart. It should be because you confessed to me. Mo Zaichen said with a gentle smile, rest early today, I'll always remember your confession. No matter how bad of a person I am, I'll always be grateful to you. He was grateful for someone who appeared when he was at his most confused. Although his heart was still filled with complicated emotions, he had a direction to go in. Lying in bed all night, Mo Zaichen looked at his phone from time to time, hoping that the sky would brighten up. He was suddenly looking forward to seeing the movie tomorrow. But what woke him up early in the morning wasn't the alarm clock, but rather a call from the Luo family. The person he once loved the most had gotten into a car accident. It seemed that on the way to find him last night, because of the heavy snow, she was uneasy and rear-ended a truck. She was still in the hospital. At 5:30 in the morning, he wanted to call the person next door, but he put down his phone. In the end, he couldn't escape the inexplicable darkness and was trapped within. In the corridor of the hospital. What took you so long? Mo Jing looked at him with a serious look and tightly knit brows. Shao Qin called you so many times last night, why didn't you pick up? In the Mo family, Mo Zaichen could do anything, but he couldn't let down his lover. This was the only request the sunglasses had for him. Therefore, for a long time, he either didn't love, or if he did, the sunglasses would support him regardless of the cost. This was why when Mo Jing knew that Mo Zaichen was interested in Luo Qingchen, he took the initiative to look for Luo Qingchen's parents. He felt that his son would be a very loyal person. He would always like the person he liked and wouldn't change his mind. But now, even the two elders of the Luo family could see his attitude towards Luo Qingchen. It had changed too quickly. Chapter 17:27. Mo Zaichen slightly knit his brows and his deep eyes seriously looked at Mo Jing as he said, Dad, I have something to say. If there is something, now is not the time to say it. Mo Jing looked at him, not planning on letting him continue. After all, he was his son. He could guess what he wanted to say and he wouldn't allow this to happen. But, Kacha. When Mo Zaichen was about to say something, the door to the emergency room was opened. The doctor took off his mask and said, Which one of you is the patient's family? I am. Madame Luo's tears came down drop by drop with a worried look on her face. The patient has lost a lot of blood and needs to be observed. I want to ask about the patient's situation. Doctor, please speak. The patient's large wound was not caused by a rear-end collision, but rather a cut to the artery in her hand. The doctor looked at them and said in a heavy voice, "Has the patient's mental state been bad recently?" Mo Jing's expression changed when he heard this. He pushed Mo Zaichen in the direction of the two elders of the Luo family and said in a low voice, "Do you think we can't let her down?" The two elders of the Luo family heard what the doctor said, and their eyes fell onto Mo Zaichen. They shook their heads and said, "My daughter is about to get married, her mental state is very good." Then it should be a sharp object in the car that accidentally hurt her. Mo Zaichen didn't say a word from beginning to end. He just looked out the window. It was pitch black, like the darkness before dawn. At 9:10 in the morning, Luo Qingchen called him for the first time, but he didn't pick up. At 10:10 in the morning, Luo Qingchen called him for the second time, but he still didn't pick up. At 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Luo Qingchen called him for the third time, but his phone was turned off. He missed his appointment like this without any warning. "Big sister, aren't we going to school today?" You looked at her carefully dressed up in the mirror and said in an angry voice, "Big sister really looks good." After a while, she patted her head and said, "Of course we're going, but we can only go by ourselves." Actually, it would be a lie if she said that she wasn't disappointed at all. She was still a bit disappointed, but she knew that since Mo Zaichen didn't appear today, he must have encountered many difficulties. He must be trying very hard to walk towards her. It must be even harder than him. "Of course we're going." Luo Qingchen let out a long sigh of relief. She looked at her and raised the corner of her mouth. "Brother might be busy and can't come. Little Tian should be waiting for you at school." Sakura Elementary School. City A's Key Primary School. All the junior high schools in this primary school were aristocratic academies. Without status, it was basically impossible to enter. Ayu was able to enter this school because of the identity that the system had arranged. It was a brand new identity called Siyu. Ayu, you are finally here." Mo Tian walked up to her and grabbed her arm. "I've been waiting for you all morning." "Uncle Bai didn't come with you? He even tried on the clothes last night. I've never seen Uncle so smug before." Mo Tian's expression was very surprised since it was her first time seeing Mo Zaichen so nervous last night. Her uncle had always been as calm as Mount Tai, never panicking before. "Your uncle is busy and can't come." Luo Qingchen patted Mo Tian's head and said, "How about we have him treat us to a big meal next time?" Chapter 1728. On a weekday afternoon, there weren't many people on the streets of City A. The snow was very deep, and the snowflakes fell on her black sweater. She was like a beautiful scenery, attracting the eyes of people passing by. Black sweater, white snow. Holding the movie tickets tightly in her hand, she nodded slightly, and her eyes turned red unconsciously. Unconsciously, she walked to the entrance of the cinema. Looking at the couples, friends and best friends, she seemed so lonely. Actually, at this time, what she should do is buy a family bucket and watch the 8 o'clock Korean drama alone at home. Instead of walking into the cinema alone to watch The 3 Years I Missed. But she didn't choose the first option, but the second one. Just like that, she took the 2 tickets and walked into the theater alone. At the rightmost seat in the 7th row, she bought a set meal for 2, a glass of orange juice and a glass of Coke. This movie was probably very popular, and the whole theater was full. Sitting on her left was a couple on their first date. The boy looked at the girl and said, "I don't know if you like to watch movies. I'm afraid you won't like it." The girl responded, "No, I like all the places you take me to." Luo Qingchen didn't pay attention to what they said next. She could only feel that they seemed to be very shy, and there was a slight strangeness and familiarity in their tone. In the past, she didn't like to drink Coke, but today, she wanted to feel the stimulation of carbon dioxide on her taste bud. Actually, with this kind of mood, the feeling of drinking it was not bad. The plot in the movie was a bit pretentious. It was about 2 couples who separated for 3 years for some reason. In these 3 years, they looked for each other, but couldn't find each other. It was a very sad love story, but she didn't feel that it was very sad at all. This kind of melodramatic love story was nothing compared to her legendary story that no one believed in. Moreover, the female lead was too weak. She was tolerant and didn't have any momentum at all. She felt so angry watching this movie. While eating the popcorn, he shook his head silently. She didn't know that in the next second, someone suddenly sat down on the empty seat on her right. Luo Qingchen didn't have time to turn her head, and a faint, gentle voice sounded with a hint of affection. The voice was very sweet, and it warmed her heart. "Can I drink this orange juice?" Luo Qingchen suddenly glanced sideways, deeply bumping into his deep eyebrows. His long arm wrapped around her body, and he took out a straw from the bag on the other side. He gently tapped her forehead and said, "Sorry, something came up, so I'm late." Luo Qingchen was a bit surprised. She felt that Mo Zechen's actions were very gentle, so gentle that it made it hard for her to hide her smile. "I thought you weren't coming." She put the popcorn in the middle and looked at Mo Zechen as she asked, "But how did you know I was here? Generally speaking, girls won't come at this time. But you're a special girl." He looked tired, but when he looked at her, there was a faint smile on his face. There was a very, very gentle feeling. If their souls hadn't been swapped, they would have been happily married. No, he was about to get married. Thinking of this, Luo Qingchen couldn't help but ask, "Are we really getting married the day after tomorrow?" Although it was difficult, it was a question that had to be asked. Chapter 1729. Mo Zechen's hand that reached for the popcorn paused as he seriously looked at her. "I won't get married because I know what I want." Mo Zechen, "I'm just a bit conflicted, it's not because of marriage." He raised his right hand and gently patted her head. "It's because of my character that I look down on myself. It's a very strange feeling." Mo Zechen's words were a bit incoherent, but Luo Qingchen could completely understand why he was this conflicted. "Do you still remember what I said?" Luo Qingchen rubbed his arm and said, "I will give you an answer. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 70%. She was about to succeed. Facing Pei Dan Dan with 70% affection, she wasn't afraid of her at all. Thank you for your answer." Mo Zechen picked up the popcorn and put it in her mouth. "The girl who wants to marry me was in a car accident." "What?" Luo Qingchen's first reaction was, did Pei Dan Dan know how to drive? Properly speaking, with her previous standard of living, getting a driver's license was a luxury. How could she drive herself? Although saying this makes me seem even worse, I still want to tell you. Mo Zechen put 2 more pieces of popcorn in her mouth before looking at her. "I feel that she's not the same as before, rather the feeling you give me is more like her from before. Actually, I don't know how to describe this feeling, but I like you." He didn't add her name and directly confessed. This time, there wasn't even a ring. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. Flowers, balloons, wedding dress, and ring. Not a single thing can be missing. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 80%. God knew how shocked Mo Zechen was at that moment. It was like time had gone back, returning to when they first met. "How could you? Ah? What about me?" After that, Luo Qingchen felt herself being pulled into a warm embrace without any warning. He hugged her so tightly that it was scorching hot. The soundtrack of the movie slowly played. The moment they hugged, the male and female leads finally found each other after 3 years. Luo Qingchen glanced at the movie and a faint smile appeared on her face as she muttered, "Actually, the plot is pretty good." At the same time, at the hospital, Pei Dan Dan was lying on the bed, her face pale. The 2 elders of the Luo family and Mo Jing were by her side, only Mo Zechen wasn't there. Mo Jing's expression was very ugly. He had Mo Zechen personally by the kanji, but after 6 hours, he was nowhere to be seen. Pei Dan Dan's eyes were filled with disappointment. After all, this was a car accident that she had personally designed. But she didn't receive any pity from Mo Zai-Chen at all. Why? Her calculations were just right, so why didn't her fiancé appear? Brother Mo, actually, we can tell what's going on between Zai-Chen and Qingchen. Luo Gudu gave a sigh. He was a bit unwilling to see his daughter suffer this kind of grievance, so he said in an old voice, "How about we forget about this wedding? I don't want to." Pei Dan heard this and immediately became excited. Her eyes opened wide as she said, "I want to marry him." God gave her such a good chance, letting her have everything. How could she miss out on such an excellent man like Mo Zai-Chen? Chapter 1730. When they came out after watching the movie, the snow had stopped. Luo Qingchen looked at Mo Zai-Chen beside her and said, "If there really is something you have to take care of, you can go. I'll wait here for you." She knew that Mo Zai-Chen didn't come today because of the pressure from his family. Pei Dan's mind was as meticulous as ever. For her, at this juncture, she could only give it her all and there was no other way. Luo Qingchen could feel the change in Mo Zai-Chen, so naturally Pei Dan could feel it too. This seemed to prove something. Not all love was based on status and money. She had used Jiang Iliang to prove this to the previous host, but now she was proving it to Mo Zai-Chen. Everything in the world had a cycle of cause and effect. No. He firmly shook his head. "Let's go. We'll pick up Ah Yu and Xiao Tian from school later." There was a patch of snow in front of them. He softly took her hand and walked forward. If they kept walking in this snow, their hair would turn white if they weren't careful. Mo Zai-Chen thought this and Luo Qingchen also thought this. They seemed very close, but also very far. But Luo Qingchen knew that as long as they worked hard to walk towards each other, no matter what kind of face or what kind of status they had, the fog would be lifted and they would see the most dazzling sunlight. That's right. They're about to get out of class. She pursed her lips and said, "I'm planning on bringing Ah Yu to eat hot pot tonight." Hot pot? Mo Zai-Chen's brows relaxed a bit. "Can we bring 2 more people to eat?" Luo Qingchen was surprised as she looked at him with a bit of confusion. "You're not planning on going back for dinner tonight?" He gave a slight nod. "Can we stay at the neighboring Miss House for a night?" Ah! Before Luo Qingchen could react, Mo Zai-Chen had already taken her away. His meaning was to stay at her house tonight? Although they had been this close before, they had only known each other for less than a day. Wasn't this progress a little too fast? Mo Zai-Chen looked at her and pretended to be frustrated as he said, "Based on your expression, you don't seem very willing." In fact, when he made this decision, he had experienced a very intense struggle in his heart. For the first time as a man, he let himself be an irresponsible person. He had personally ruined the wedding that he had been looking forward to the most. He didn't even know how to explain it. There were many unanswered questions in his heart, but he had to do this because there was an indescribable obsession in his heart. He continued to pursue this obsession. She had also once asked herself what she would do if she no longer loved the person she loved now. He didn't dare to think about it, and he knew that there was no answer. "Even if I don't want to, you will still do it, won't you?" Luo Qingchen made a face at him and said, "Just think of it as me being kind and taking you in." Actually, this seemed to be quite good. If she could live like this for the rest of her life, she was willing to let Mo Zai-Chen stay here. Standing at the entrance of the elementary school, Mo Zai-Chen attracted a lot of attention. He was always dazzling no matter where he went. Big sister, uncle, Ah Yu and Mo Tian walked out of the school hand in hand. Without knowing why, this scene strangely made her feel warm. But while it was warm, she also felt a chill run down her back. At this moment, behind a certain cover, a person wearing branded clothes was looking in their direction with a sharp and sinister gaze. Chapter 1731. Yes, Pei Dan had secretly run out of the hospital. She had calculated when Mo Tion's class was over and wanted to weakly run out in front of Mo Zaichen. But she never thought that there would be another person standing beside him. And this person was the person she hated the most in her life. Luo Qingchen. Pei Dan Dan muttered through gritted teeth. I want you to lose everything, I definitely won't let you be that happy. In that instant, the scene from before flashed in front of Luo Qingchen's eyes. There was the sound of whistling trains and rows of red, brick-colored railroad tracks. What is it? Mo Zaichen noticed that something was wrong with her expression. He had seen the same expression on that girl's face before, but then everything changed. Now that it was a different person, she actually had the same expression as her. Nothing. Luo Qingchen shook her head and said, I might be hungry. She felt a bit panicked, so she came up with a very bad excuse. Mo Zaichen was a smart person, he must have seen through it. But with his high IQ and EQ, he naturally wouldn't say it. Then let's go back and make hot pot. Mo Zaichen looked at her and seriously said, if there's anything, you have to tell me. All right. When they returned to her house, they went through the back door and not the front door. Because at this time, the Mo family's villa was already lit up. Mo Tian seemed to understand something and didn't even ask anything. Instead, she obediently said, then I want to sleep with Yu tonight. Yu happily nodded, all right. Luo Qingchen leaned against the sofa, watching the youth carefully preparing the ingredients in the kitchen. She also watched the two children laughing and felt that this kind of life was very comfortable. Girl, do you eat spicy food? Ah. Luo Qingchen was surprised. She tilted her head to look at Mo Zaichen in the kitchen and said, are you talking to me? Of course. Fool. Mo Zaichen, who was wearing an apron, had a pampering look in his eyes. It was like he was looking at his wife, looking very gentle. Seeing Mo Zaichen like this, she couldn't help blushing. Out of habit, he touched his ear. It was boiling hot. Why didn't you call me by my name? You should call me Lass. She bit her lip and said, I didn't react in time. Mo Zaichen heard this and a faint sparkle appeared in his dark eyes. He looked at her and said, I feel that the name Qingju doesn't suit you, you should have a more special name. His words were contradictory, but Luo Qingchen understood what he meant. Luo Qingchen looked at him and smiled gently. She didn't say anything and just kept smiling happily. Idiot. He turned to look at her and asked casually, can you eat spicy food? No. Luo Qingchen shook her head decisively. Where's the green onion? No. He shook his head decisively again. Where's the coriander? No. She even knit her brows when she shook her head this time. Mo Zaichen said with a chuckle, the nutrition isn't balanced. Although he said this, he still brought out a very light hot pot without any chili, green onion, or coriander. Chapter 1732. Cheers! Luo Qingchen raised her glass. There wasn't red wine in the glass today, but rather coke that was releasing carbon dioxide. A fragrant aroma assaulted his nostrils, causing his stomach to growl. Everything was so comfortable that she forgot the uneasiness in her heart. It was another night filled with stars and there was a bit of snow falling from the sky. Yu and Mo Tian hugged their dolls as they slept. Mo Zaichen warmed a glass of milk for her and the two of them sat in front of the skylight, looking at the moon outside. In the end, he still said the words in his heart that she had been waiting for a long time. I won't go to the wedding. Mo Zaichen's deep eyes darkened as he looked at her. Although you might find it shameful to say this, if I have to go, I want to hold your hand. Luo Qingchen's hand holding the glass of milk trembled, and her eyes turned red. She knew that for Mo Zaichen to say this to her, he must have hesitated for a long time before finally deciding to follow his heart. After a while, he saw that Luo Qingchen didn't respond. He nervously said, Why aren't you saying anything? Did she think that he was fickle and didn't cherish her after getting her? Or did she think that he was a person who liked the new and hated the old? Actually, it wasn't strange that she thought this. After all, he also thought that he was this kind of person. But his feelings of liking had never changed. He told himself that if there was this kind of shameful change of feelings in the future, he would admit that he was a scumbag. No, I just feel very moved. Luo Qingchen took a sip of milk before looking at him and saying, "Thank you for choosing me without knowing anything. Mo Zaichun really is a very, very good person." Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 90%. In the end, he was attracted to her again. No matter what time and space, no matter what world, no matter what identity. As long as she was Luo Qingchen, he could use his feelings to find her and use all kinds of methods. You wouldn't think that I'm a person who doesn't care about feelings. No. Before Mo Zaichun could finish, Luo Qingchen cut him off. She looked into his dark as stars eyes and said, "You will never be that kind of person in my heart. But I can't promise you anything. I don't need it. Lass, Mo Zaichun." Luo Qingchen softly called out his name. Her clear eyes trembled slightly as she said, "If you like someone, you should follow your heart and move forward. Because no matter how big the storm is, you won't encounter any obstacles." After a while, Mo Zaichun raised his right hand and patted her head. Pat, pat. This was a sleepless night, whether it was Luo Qingchen, Mo Zaichun, Pei Dandan, or Jiang Yiliang. None of the four of them could sleep peacefully because tomorrow was going to be a grand marriage between the two big families of a city. In this wedding that caused a sensation in City A, the male lead had already disappeared for a whole day, and no one could find him. Pei Dandan was alone in her room, trying on the wedding dress designed by a gold medal designer from Milan. It was one of a kind. She had heavy makeup on and her lips were flaming red. Her empty eyes were filled with endless hatred, as she once again hated this world. Chapter 1733. At this moment, she couldn't help thinking of the scene at Sakura Elementary School this afternoon. Mo Zaichun had chosen to go with her in the end. Whether she was Luo Qingchen or Pei Dandan, whether she had a peerless face like Qingchen or an ordinary face, he could walk towards her step by step based on his feelings. Based on what? Pei Dandan kept shouting these three words in her heart. Why? She had carefully calculated and done all these things. She wanted to stand at the top like a queen, emitting dazzling light. Just like Luo Qingchen in the past, she would be the center of attention no matter where she went. That kind of dazzling person. It was a pity that reality had slapped her in the face. She had this identity and still didn't get anything. At least she didn't get what she wanted. Not only that, it was stolen by the same person with such a lowly identity. She couldn't help being angry. She really couldn't help being angry. In the past, she was also a very kind person. She was forced to come to this point today. This wasn't her fault, it was always Luo Qingchen's fault. Based on what did she steal from her? At the same time, in the Jiang family, Jiang Yiliang was lying in bed looking at his recent WeChat messages with Luo Qingchen. Naturally, he didn't know that this person only had Luo Qingchen's face. But he felt a bit of familiarity and a bit of unwillingness. Without knowing why, after the fire at school, Luo Qingchen's personality was different from before. It wasn't clingy like before and it wasn't cold like before. Rather, it was a bit familiar, a strange sense of familiarity. She would reply to his WeChat messages. Although she didn't reply to everything, she would at least reply. Sometimes she would complain to him, and sometimes she would ask for his care. He felt that facing the current Luo Qingchen, Jiang Yiliang couldn't resist at all. She wouldn't approach him, but she also wouldn't distance herself from him. Even if they were about to get married, she would still stand in the black and white area of friendship and love, drifting away. When night slowly fell and the sun slowly rose, a city's biggest wedding began. Luo Qingchen was about to face her most important battle, so the sense of danger became stronger. It wasn't danger that belonged to her, but rather Ah Yu. In the busy scene, everyone was preparing everything, but the groom didn't appear. Mo Jing's face was very ugly because Mo Zai Chen's phone had been off for 3 days. Even in the final moment, he still didn't believe that the son he was proud of would be this irresponsible and leave this wedding. To him, this was something that he absolutely could not allow. Brother Luo, you can be assured. Mo Zai's son said. Mo Luo's son was Luo Ti. Luo Gudu sighed softly and said, maybe my daughter doesn't have this fortune. Just leave the matters of the young people to them. This wedding… After all, she was his biological daughter. No matter how many resources he had in the business world, he was not willing to gamble with his daughter's happiness. Luo Ti Luo's Luo. Luo Ti Luon. Chapter 1734. Luo Qingchen never thought that Pei Dandan would use the Luo family's power to take Ah Yu away from Sakura Elementary School after her first class. When she learned this news, it was already noon. She and Mo Zaichen rushed to the school, but the teachers didn't know anything. Sitting in the passenger seat of Mo Zaichen's car, her heart was filled with panic, but her face was strangely calm. Because she knew that she couldn't panic. Pei Dandan was a smart person. She had the identity of the Luo family's young miss, so if it wasn't the last moment, she wouldn't kill someone or die together. Then why did she take Ah Yu away? Don't worry, I'll definitely find Ah Yu. Mo Zaichen's thoughts were quickly turning. Actually, he didn't understand the current Luo Qingchen and didn't know what she was thinking. He could only use the identity of a bystander to figure out why she did this and what followed. Mo Tian sat in the back seat with tears falling down, but she didn't dare cry out loud. She blamed herself. If she had asked the teacher more about who had picked up you during the break, perhaps things wouldn't have gotten to such a tricky point. Although she was still a child, she probably cherished friendships far more than the ones between adults. After a minute, Luo Qingchen and Mo Zaichen's expressions changed at the same time. The two of them said at the same time, train station. Mo Zaichen looked at her with a look of surprise because when he thought of this word, he had made countless assumptions in his mind and then eliminated them one by one. As the youngest professor at America's Aspen College, he thought that almost no one could do this complicated thing. Because it was hard to guess where Ah Yu was, but he never thought that the girl beside him would blurt out this word. Without any hesitation, you. How did you know? He looked at her and couldn't help feeling surprised. He slightly knit his brows and said, but I don't know what train station it is. He could deduce that Luo Qingchen should have taken Ah Yu to the train station because without harming her, it was reasonable to sell a child to an unknown village or town. But there were so many train stations in the city, so if they checked them one by one, there wouldn't be enough time. Luo Qingchen tightly knit her brows and pursed her lips as she said, it should be a train station. In the future, what she heard was the sound of train horns and tracks. The system was right about something. What was supposed to happen would happen, and what was supposed to come would come. She couldn't go against the heavens, she couldn't stop the future from happening. But she could change the ending. You. Mo Zaichen looked at her and said Yuchen looked at her, girl, you really do surprise me. This was the first time in his life that he admired someone so much. What kind of theoretical analysis did she use to calculate that Ah Yu would be taken to the train station? In a resting area that was filled with the smell of smoke, it was filled with the aura of poverty. This was the only green train that was running today. The ticket price was very cheap and the speed was very slow. It was especially for the poor and even the waiting area was different from normal. Chapter 1735. Pei Dandan's clothes were very conspicuous in the waiting hall. There was a half-blind cripple walking in front of her, Ah Gang. When Ah Gang saw Pei Dandan, his saliva almost dripped out. His face scrunched up and he revealed a wretched smile. Although he couldn't do anything on the surface, the other side couldn't do anything to him when he fantasized in his heart. You were introduced by Big Brother Pei, right? Ah Gang licked his lips with a wretched look on his face. Pei Dan Dan didn't know many people in this world. The only one she was familiar with was her big brother who was in debt. But this time, she didn't use her identity as a little sister to find him, but rather another identity. The identity of the Luo family's young miss. The goods are here. She threw a black envelope onto the wheelchair in disgust and looked at Ah Gang. I don't need you to do anything, just send this girl as far away as possible and never come back. Her voice was extremely cold and her eyes were filled with hatred. Relax. I'll take her money and take care of her. Ah Gang picked up the envelope with his right hand and touched its thickness. He looked it over before revealing a wretched smile. Not to mention that this little girl is this good-looking, our brothers really have good luck with women. Pei Dan Dan heard this and her lips curled into a smile with a deeper meaning. She pursed her red lips and said, Then you have to work hard, don't give me any face. As soon as her voice fell, she put on her mask and left the waiting hall, not even looking back. Her thoughts hadn't changed from beginning to end. Since she couldn't obtain happiness, no one in this world could obtain happiness. Pain, shouldn't it be fair for everyone to have it? At the same time, Luo Qingchen and Mo Zaichen arrived at the train station at the same time. It was close to the end of the year, and there were many people coming and going, so it was impossible to find Ah Yu immediately. Where was she? I've already called the station master and had the train crew pay attention to the child. I've already sent the pictures. Mo Zaichen tightly held her shoulder with both hands. Don't worry, we'll find her. No. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and slowly raised her eyes. She looked at him and said, I don't know if you believe in fate, but Ah Yu has a disaster in her life. If I'm not wrong, it should be today. Although this kind of dialogue seemed like it could only appear in fantasy stories, the 5 elements divination and feng shui had been passed down by powerful descendants since ancient times. It was just that ordinary people didn't know about it. The fast-paced life of modern people had made them forget many things left behind by their ancestors. Actually, everyone had premonitions. You don't tell me you're a prophet. I'm not, but Ah Yu's grandfather is. Luo Qingchen squinted her eyes, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. She looked at him and said, It should be a green train with rusty tracks, green train. Mo Zaichen quickly took out his tablet and tapped on it with his slender fingers. If it's a green train, there's a train that's about to leave. No, there's only one train that's leaving today, it's at the East Station. As soon as Mo Zaichen's voice fell, Luo Qingchen's expression changed and she quickly ran towards the station. She promised Mu Wang to save Ah Yu's life, she would definitely do it. At this time, Pei Dan Dan, who was wearing a black mask and large black sunglasses, saw Luo Qingchen and Mo Zaichen not far away. Chapter 1736. The train to Yangping Town left at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was already 1:15, so they should have checked in already. Run slower. Mo Zaichen took her hand while gently stroking her hair. There's still time. No, there's no time. Luo Qingchen shook her head. The train is about to leave. I said there's time, so there's time. Mo Zaichen looked at her with his deep eyes and waved the phone in his hand. This train will only come today, it won't leave. Luo Qingchen was surprised. Only then did she react. With Mo Zaichen's status in a city, it was very easy for him to make a train come in and not leave. In the end, it was a good thing he was here. Walking to the waiting hall, the smoke filled the air, and it gave off a bad smell. The sanitation worker gave a sigh and cleaned the ash and cigarette butts on the ground again and again. The economic foundation determined the superstructure. This sentence was quite reasonable. The people here didn't have low statuses, it was their actions that made them this kind of person. After going around, they didn't see Ah Yu. The people around them all left the waiting area and headed to the gate. Ah Yu should have already gone in. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips as she looked at Mo Zaichen and asked, Do you have a way to let us in now? The tickets should have stopped selling now. If they didn't have someone they knew, they definitely couldn't enter the platform. You can enter as you wish. Mo Zhe-chen's lips curled into a faint smile. Because I'm here. No one would know that in this kind of crisis, when there was someone standing by your side, just how warm that feeling was. She stood on her tiptoes and placed a kiss on his cheek. Thank you, Mo Zhe-chen. I will use my actions to prove that your choice wasn't wrong. The person he loved from beginning to end wasn't wrong. He wasn't a scumbag, but that terrifying obsession of his made him fall into a swamp. She would definitely tell him that his feelings were right. The person he loved and trusted wasn't wrong. Mo Zhe-chen couldn't hide the gentleness in his eyes as he placed a kiss on her forehead. I know. For the past few nights, he had been letting his imagination run wild. The more he thought about it, the more ridiculous it felt, but the closer he got to the truth. Sherlock Holmes once said that when all the impossibilities have been eliminated, the only thing left, even if it is impossible, is the truth. He always had a very scary feeling in his heart, but he never dared to face it directly. That was perhaps the Luo Qingchen of the past and the present Qingjiu were the same person. It was ridiculous, but he really thought so. Every movement of the young man's hand and eyes seemed to be familiar to him. Even the words they spoke and the actions they took were so similar. If so, then he would be happier than anyone else. However, they would never have thought that the woman standing behind them had already reached her dark hands towards them. At the same time, Ah Gang used the back of his rough hand to rub the girl's delicate calf. This feeling made the blood in his body boil instantly. His mind was filled with thoughts, and his expression was one of wretched enjoyment. Ayu, lying on his back, felt a bit uncomfortable being rubbed by this rough hand. Her eyelashes trembled and she tightly knit her brows. The noise around her gradually woke her up and her calf was red and swollen from the rubbing. Chapter 1737. Ah Gang noticed the girl on his back move at the same time, and then there was a sharp cry. At this time, the train hadn't arrived yet. Everyone's eyes fell onto Ah Gang and Ah Yu at the same time. Some of the more timid girls even took 2 steps back, looking at them with looks of fear. You! Who are you? Ah Yu's legs were a bit weak. She struggled to get off Ah Gang's back, but she couldn't stand firm and fell to the ground. Damn! Ah Gang muttered in a small voice before saying in a loud voice, Little sister, you still want to run away with that wild man? How old are you? Quickly come home with big brother. It had to be said, since they were in this line of work, they could encounter sudden situations at any time. This kind of play was quite easy to play out. Everyone looked at them with doubtful gazes, but not a single person moved forward. No. No. Ah Yu's face was incomparably pale as she desperately shook her head, muttering, I don't know her, save me. Save me. She wanted to run, but she found that she didn't have any strength at all. The wind blew in her ears and the sound of the green train's kacha rang out, as a pleasant whistle echoed through the platform. Luo Qingchen, who was still climbing the stairs, heard this whistle, and her heart skipped a beat. Her hands couldn't help trembling. It was at this time. Ah Yu's calamity. This is bad. She gritted her teeth and ran up 3 flights of stairs. She couldn't hear what Mo Zhe-chen was saying behind her. Wait for her, wait for her. At the same time, Ah Gang picked Ah Yu up, planning to get on the train and block her mouth. He didn't expect that the moment he picked her up, his arm would be bitten by Ah Yu's teeth, and he would bleed immediately. Damn it! Ah Gang angrily roared out. At this time, the front of the green train slowly appeared. Pei Dan also walked onto the platform. She took a shortcut and arrived at the platform before Luo Qingchen. She personally stopped Ah Yu, who was prepared to run away. Ah Yu rolled and crawled forward, but she bumped into Pei Dan. She squatted down and stroked her cheeks with her slender fingers. You're crying so pitifully. I can't bear to see you like this, let her go. Luo Qingchen's eyes were cold and even her voice was trembling with an ice-cold tone. Big Sister Qing, save me! Ayu's voice was close to screaming for help. Luo Qingqian's cold eyes narrowed as she looked at the human skin Pei Dan Dan in front of her. Her entire body was emitting a disgusting aura. When she inserted her sharp nails into Ayu's arm, Luo Qingqian's cold eyes were filled with killing intent. This was the first time she had the intention to kill in this plane. At first, he didn't want to care about this supporting female character, but now, he wanted her dead. This was enough to prove that she had done something that she could not tolerate. I want you to see with your own eyes the person you want to protect die in front of you. Pei Dan Dan's eyes didn't show any fear or panic, only a deathly stillness. She had seen this kind of gaze before. It was in a sea of flames. She was standing in the middle of the stage and surrounded by flames, but there was no fear in her eyes at all. As soon as her voice fell, she didn't hesitate to push Ayu out of the train before it reached the platform. Chapter 1738. Everything around her became still and the train was already in front of Ayu. The train was already in front of Ayu. Under everyone's gaze, what could she do to not break the plane that had already collapsed? If she saved Ayu like this, she was afraid a system notification. The plane will completely collapse and usher in an epic-level apocalypse. System. Don't play dumb at this point, tell me what to do. Put death on the ground and fight to live. Don't tell me you're telling me to die. All living things, cause and effect. In addition, the host's time and space freeze has reached level 3, you can release one person's freeze. Luo Qingqian understood the meaning of the system. Although she didn't know how things would develop, but if Ayu wanted to pass this tribulation, someone had to die for her. This should be what the system meant by putting death on the ground and fighting to live. And to release a person's freeze, it was probably. The system knew that she already saw Pei Dan Dan to the point where she wanted to get rid of her quickly. Ding! Freeze has been released. Pei Dan Dan's entire body shook. The sudden absolute silence made her unable to recover. She looked at everything in front of her in disbelief. What did you just say? Do you want to repeat it? Luo Qingqian's lips curved into an extremely cold smile. Waves of cold air were emitted from her body, as if she could freeze everyone around her. Pei Dan Dan's face was pale. She wasn't someone who was afraid of death. But when she saw everything that was beyond common sense, her heart couldn't help but be filled with fear. This was probably a fear that everyone would have. This. What is this? She desperately shook her head. At this moment, her flaming red lips were especially scary. Luo Qingqian's eyebrows slightly moved. She looked at her coldly and said, "You don't understand? In our world, this is called time and space freeze." It had to be said that at this moment, looking at Pei Dan Dan's shocked and scared eyes, she felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure in her heart. All the suppressed emotions on the way here seemed to be vented out at this moment. Impossible, impossible, impossible. She said impossible 3 times in a row, but her feet couldn't stand on the ground and softened. Slowly looking over, she saw Ayu standing in front of the train with a frightened face. Pei Dan Dan, don't shout. I'm not Pei Dan Dan. I'm Luo Qingqian. She tried her best to defend herself. In this world where there was only her Luo Qingqian, she tried her best to say this sentence to herself. That good-looking face instantly twisted. In all of this, it looked somewhat sinister. No matter who you are, you will always be a pitiful person who can't obtain anything. Luo Qingqian coldly snorted and looked at her with a condescending attitude. Because you can't kill me, and you can't kill the people around me. Impossible, I will make you suffer, I will definitely make you suffer. Pei Dan Dan's hands knocked hard on the floor as she screamed hoarsely, "You monster, this world will not tolerate you. You are so ugly and your status is so lowly. How can you compare to me?" In Luo Qingqian's eyes, she was so funny when she talked to herself about her own shortcomings. What was the point of living for someone who looked down on himself? Chapter 1739. Love? What an ironic word this was. How long had it been since someone said they loved her? When she was in Star Royal, she didn't have anything, but she lived happily. Because of her strong independence, she obtained Jiang Yiliang's favor. But without knowing why, he changed later on. He fell in love with the woman he hated the most and became a stranger. She could suffer, but she couldn't go back to the days of suffering after enjoying it. She could have no one to love her, but she couldn't go back to being alone after being loved. It was because of this that her personality changed. The demon in her heart completely took over her, without a single bit of light. The one with this identity is me, not you? Could it be that you want to tell the world that you are a space and time monster? Luo Qingchen gave a shrug and said with a faint smile, "How old was I when I first called Mom? What was my first birthday present? What was my favorite flower? Do you like dogs or cats more? Do you know?" As soon as her voice fell, Pei Dandan's face had no expression at all, like a pool of stagnant water. Because Luo Qingchen had seen through her thoughts. She was a smart girl. How could she not know that even if she became the Luo family's young miss, every word she said and every action she did was like walking on thin ice? As long as she took a single wrong step, she would lose everything. She didn't live for herself, but rather for Luo Qingchen. She was like a puppet. Don't say it, don't say it. She covered her ears and hugged herself, curling up as she kept shaking her head. Don't say it, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. Seeing Pei Dandan, whose heart had completely collapsed, Luo Qingchen gave a cold snort as her heart filled with satisfaction. Host, space and time freeze is about to end. Got it? She turned around and looked at Mo Zaichen in front of her. His eyes were especially beautiful, and the familiar black mark behind his ear was dazzling from this position against the light. He was such a person that no matter where he was, he would always attract her gaze and attention. But this time, she seemed to be leaving first. She could totally imagine how much despair he would feel after she left. He had also thought that it would be better to wait for the end of the world to come. Then, everyone would die together. But when she thought of Mo Tian and Ah Yu's smiles, she felt that she couldn't do that. Because he was too selfish. She closed her eyes and tiptoed slightly to plant a kiss on his thin lip. This seemed to be the third time she had taken the initiative to kiss him, and every time, she felt very nervous. Even if this time, she had kissed him without his knowledge. Under the snow-filled platform, she could feel his scorching temperature on her lips. With a light touch, she moved her lips away and could feel the faint sweetness. Luo Qingchen would never know that although Mo Zaichen was frozen in space and time, he could still feel her kiss. Moreover, it was that deep. Chapter 1740. As soon as her voice fell, she charged at Ah Yu in the countdown before the seal was broken. She used both hands to pick her up and threw her onto the platform. "Girl!" A voice filled with despair rang in her ears, mixing in the sound of the train and the screams of the onlookers. Luo Qingchen could feel her fingertips tremble a bit. So the moment they knew that death was coming, everyone would be filled with fear. When she was about to accept the pain of being turned into a meat patty, there was a prompt from the system that rang in her mind. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 100%. At that moment, she felt her body explode with a ping sound. The feeling of watching himself go from being a party to a bystander in an instant was so inconceivable. She seemed to understand the meaning of the system at that moment. Fighting to live after death, so it was talking about this. When the train was about to hit her, their souls were exchanged. Luo Qingchen could even see Pei Dandan's terrified eyes at that moment, as well as her wide-open eyes. This was her final appearance before death. Fear, despair, fear, and hatred. You will have 10 seconds to repair the plane. Other than the male lead, everyone's memories will be changed with the plane's repair. Everything that happened just now will become Ah Yu accidentally falling off the platform and Pei Dandan came out to save her. After hearing the long dialogue from the system, Luo Qingchen could understand its meaning. After all, if she didn't purify her memories, then she would be the murderer who killed Pei Dandan right now. She had gone through all kinds of hardships to come back. How could she go to jail? But why did she have to get rid of the male lead? -10 987 654 3210. The plane has been repaired. Activating space control. The first thing that entered her eyes was the pitiful cry of a girl around her, as the entire platform was covered in blood. The train was too fast, so fast that when it crushed Pei Dandan, there was a loud sound and the track was dyed red. Luo Qingchen slowly stood up. She wanted to find Mo Zaichen, but she found that he was desperately pounding the green train like he didn't care about his life. He muttered as if he was crying, "Stop, stop, stop." She stood there, watching Mo Zaichen fall into a deathly silence. Her heart skipped a beat and it was like it had been hit by a large stone, suddenly shaking. At this moment, she had almost completely changed her mind. If she saw Mo Zaichen's eyes filled with despair, she might have decided to let the plane collapse and bring the end of the world. This was indeed a very, very selfish idea, but she couldn't bear to leave Mo Zaichen alone in this world. He was a man whose EQ and IQ were off the charts, but at this moment, he was kneeling on the ground, begging for the green train to stop. This was Luo Qingchen's first time seeing Mo Zaichen like this. She took a deep breath and slowly walked towards her. Every step she took was filled with love and gratitude. When all the dust had settled, he walked towards her steadily. Chapter 1741. Everyone was stunned as their eyes fell onto Mo Zaichen. Snowflakes were falling from the sky, and that handsome young man had a look of despair in his eyes. He didn't seem to hear someone calling him from behind as he rushed forward without caring about anything else. Luo Qingchen raised her right hand and firmly grabbed his hand, using all her strength to pull him to her side. "Don't move," she softly whispered in his ear, but Luo Qingchen felt that these two words used all the strength in her life. Hugging his broad shoulders, her hands kept trembling. She was afraid that he would be impulsive and jump off the train. She didn't know if her hug was too warm or if her tone was too firm. At that moment, Mo Zaichen actually didn't resist and just silently let her hug him. It was like the world had stopped and the chaotic darkness in front of him suddenly lit up. "You!" His low trembling voice slowly rang out, sounding like a cello by his ear. But he didn't say anything else. He was waiting for an impossible answer. He felt that he shouldn't live in a world where science was the most important because this terrifying feeling was too unbelievable. "I am Luo Qingchen." She choked up. She took a deep breath and said through gritted teeth, "I used to be Luo Qingchen, then I was Qingjiu, now." She paused before looking up slightly. Crystal-like tears fell from the corner of her eyes as she looked deeply at Mo Zaichen. "I am your little girl." Luo Qingchen didn't know if Mo Zaichen could understand what she was saying, but she knew that she could tell from his eyes that his heart was definitely surging. "I really hope that the ending will be the same as I imagined." Mo Zaichen's brows relaxed as he revealed a faint smile. His hands tightly held her waist as they trembled slightly. Same, she said same 3 times in a row as her heart filled with emotions. There was a tacit understanding between them. He understood what she wanted to say. Even if it was the answer, he would understand even if she didn't say it herself. "What would you like to drink tonight?" Mo Zaichen softly patted her head. He could finally let it go, he could finally tell himself that he wasn't that kind of person. The person he liked had always been the same. It had never changed. Even if he had been confused, doubtful, and panicked. "Let's eat hot pot." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and looked at him. "I want to eat a little spicy tonight." "All right." "I still want to eat crabs." "All right." "Another big bottle of Coke?" "All right." Mo Zaichen, "Yeah, I'm here. I don't know how to explain it, but I really tried my best to be by your side." "I know." Mo Zhe-chen looked at her with his deep as ink eyes and placed a kiss on her forehead. It was like a snowflake, as light as mist, yet so profound. What happened after that was mostly based on what she had seen on the news. Pei Dan Dan didn't die. Her body leaned to the side at the critical moment, but her legs were crushed by the train. She was still in the intensive care unit and wasn't out of danger. Luo Qingchen felt that whether she lived or died, it didn't matter to her. After all, even if she lived like this, it would only be more painful. Chapter 1742. It was a sumptuous hot pot dinner. Yu and Mo Tian looked at each other and didn't move their chopsticks. Luo Qingchen looked at Yu for a long time before handing her a can of iced cola. Yu, do you remember what the first thing you said was when you saw Qingjiu? As soon as her voice fell, tears fell from Yu's originally red eyes drop by drop, like a broken string of pearls, completely unstoppable. Luo Qingchen wanted to pat her head like usual, but she didn't expect her to resist as she cried, "Are you really big sister Qingjiu?" Seeing this little girl in her teens crying in such an aggrieved manner, Luo Qingchen's heart couldn't help sinking. While feeling heartache for this girl, she also felt heartache for Mo Zhe-chen. How strong of a heart did he have to be able to watch all of this happen and accept it with all his might? I am. But I saw her with my own eyes, Yu. Luo Qingchen said in a calm voice, you should be more accepting of metaphysics than others, you should have grown up. Although it wasn't good to say this to a child after experiencing such a terrifying thing. But she couldn't be by her side forever, she had to grow up faster than others. I don't have any relatives. Yu looked at her, big sister Qing, I'm very scared. She slowly reached her head over and tightly held her right hand. She gently wiped away the tears in her eyes and slowly accepted all of this. 3 days later, Pei Dan Dan woke up in the hospital. It was said that she used a scalpel to hurt many innocent people and was locked up in a mental hospital. A mental patient without legs. But Luo Qingchen didn't feel pity for her. Other than hatred for this kind of person, she felt even more indifference. She hoped that she would never meet this kind of woman again in her life. It had to be said the next night after that incident. When Luo Qingchen returned to the Luo family with her own identity, she had a very strange feeling. Other than the familiar servants and housekeeper in the living room, there were her parents and Mo Zhe-chen's parents. The only difference was that the person standing beside her this time was Mo Zhe-chen. Sunglasses immediately rushed up and looked at her with a pained expression. Qing, don't be afraid. I will definitely teach this unfilial son a lesson for you. I only have one daughter-in-law, and that's you. Brother Mo, Luo Guda hurriedly stepped forward and pulled him back, his right hand resting on his shoulder as he sighed. Let the children sit down and explain. After all, I actually didn't know Zhe-chen very well. It was all my negligence. I still stand by my words. If the children are unwilling, this kind of thing really can't be forced. Luo Qingchen could clearly feel the embarrassment on her father's face. In City A, everyone knew that if she could become the daughter-in-law of Sunglasses, she would have a lot of resources in the business circle. But even so, he didn't want his daughter to suffer. That. Luo Qingchen opened her mouth slowly. She wanted to say something, but she felt that something was wrong. Mo Zhe-chen could feel her emotions and softly patted her head. Go sit down first. To be honest, there was a very special feeling when she was with someone whose IQ and EQ were off the charts. It should be that no matter what the situation was, he could easily solve any difficult emotions she had. Chapter 1743. Mo Jing was stunned. His expression changed to one of doubt and confusion. Why did it feel like his son suddenly looked at Luo Qingchen with such gentleness and pampering? Could it be that the matter at the train station had changed his mind? That was impossible. The news he heard said that Luo Qingchen didn't do anything. It was an unfamiliar woman who saved a little girl. Then, why? The Luo couple looked at each other with confused looks. After a minute, the 5 of them were sitting down. The housekeeper brewed a pot of hot tea and tactfully left. After a bit of silence, the first person to speak was Mo Jing. The wedding must be held, the sooner the better. Mo Jing looked at Mo Zaichen with a serious look. You can directly say what you want. Qing is the bride you personally chose. You can't do things that go against your conscience. After saying this, the two elders of the Luo family fell into silence. They tacitly agreed to Mo Jing's words, feeling wronged for their daughter. You're right. Mo Zaichen raised his right hand and placed it on the back of her hand. I've wronged her. Luo Qingchen's brows trembled and her lips couldn't help curling into a faint smile. This feeling really was good. But when the two elders of the Luo family heard this, they looked at him in disbelief. Luo Gudu cleared his throat and looked at Mo Zaichen. You mean that you're still planning to be with our Qing? From your heart? Although Mo Zaichen was sitting, he gave a deep bow. There were many things that happened before, although I don't know how to explain it. But please believe me, the only person I loved from beginning to end was Qing. There was no one else. It was from my heart. You. Luo Gudu wanted to say something, but he found that he couldn't say anything. He felt that everything had changed too quickly and he couldn't accept it. Of course, what he couldn't accept was Mo Jing. He pushed up his gold-framed glasses and said, It's best if the wedding is held as soon as possible. Do you have any problems? Tomorrow, the day after, the day after, the day after, the day after. I'm free. Hiss. The Luo couple, who were sitting opposite him, were shocked. They were still in a daze. Suppressing his shock, Sunglasses continued to ask, Whatever Qing needs, you must fully cooperate with her. Is that okay? I don't need your cooperation. Mo Zaichen looked over and looked into her clear eyes with a pampering gaze. I will help her do everything she needs to do. He had seen people flaunting their love in front of their classmates, in front of their friends, in front of their brothers. It was the first time that Luo Qingchen saw such a display of affection in front of her parent. Moreover, this display of affection stunned their parent. Luo Qingchen, who was sitting at the side, couldn't help but laugh out loud. The atmosphere was a little strange. However, it was strangely sweet. Their wedding was set for the 7th of next month. Mo Zaichen personally made a wedding dress, rings, balloons, flowers, and a pair of crystal shoes for her. The glazed water diamond shoes were sparkling and translucent. They were so beautiful that they couldn't be more beautiful. On a boring afternoon, Luo Qingchen was lying on the sofa enjoying the sun. She casually picked up the newspaper beside her and saw an eye-catching headline. After a patient from a mental hospital stabbed 3 people, he was shot dead by the police. There was a blurry photo attached to it. A person without legs was lying in a pool of blood, with eyes that were lifeless and filled with hatred. In the end, Pei Dan still came to this step. This kind of ending couldn't help making people sigh, but a pitiful person must have a hateful side. Chapter 1744. What are you looking at? Why are you so focused? Mo Zaichen gave her a cup of strawberry milk tea and a piece of strawberry cake, but he took away the newspaper in her hand. When he saw the title, he couldn't help knitting his brows. 3 seconds later, he sat down beside her and took her in his embrace. He looked at her and said, It's all in the past. Do you know who she is? Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and looked at him as she asked, How do you know that I'm not me? Is it really just based on your feelings? Until now, she had regained her identity. Mo Zaichen firmly held her in his embrace. She didn't dare believe that Mo Zaichen could recognize her in that kind of story. Our little girl, these are 2 questions. Mo Zaichen put a piece of chocolate in her mouth. I don't know who she is, but I know that she isn't you. Then, munch, munch. Luo Qingchen took a bite of the chocolate and said in a muffled voice, then, the second question. It really is based on feelings. Mo Zaichen helplessly shook his head and said with a bitter smile, This kind of feeling makes me think that I'm a fickle man. Luo Qingchen heard this and suddenly thought of the questions Mo Zaichen had asked her. He must have been very conflicted back then. Facts have proven that not only are you not a fickle man, you are a very infatuated person. Luo Qingchen softly hugged his arm and said, "It's been hard on you." Cuckoo. Mo Zaichen cleared his throat and said, "Since you asked me 2 questions, I'll also ask you 2 questions. What is it?" "The first question, even if you exchange souls, why didn't you tell me directly? Actually, if you told me, I would have believed it." His eyes were very sincere. Although this matter seemed ridiculous, as long as Luo Qingchen said it, he would believe it. After all, he was a person who used the method of elimination to figure out this kind of thing. But he could guess the reason why Luo Qingchen didn't say it. She probably had her own difficulties, so she couldn't say it. Actually, asking this question was mainly to pave the way for the second question. Luo Qingchen thought about it and shrugged. "This is very complicated. You've read novels before, right? It's the sci-fi type." "No." Mo Zaichen decisively shook his head. Then it's a bit difficult to explain." She gulped down 2 mouthfuls of the milk and said, "Didn't you say there were 2 questions? Then let's change to the next one. This question isn't easy to answer." Mo Zaichen pretended to be disappointed as he looked at her. "You really can't answer? Why don't you read the novel written by Origami Liuli? She'll tell you the answer." "I won't." Mo Zaichen firmly shook his head. "I want to ask the second question." Ask. "This time I will tell you everything I know." Luo Qingchen put down the cup and looked at her seriously with a pair of clear eyes. But after that, Mo Zaichen's eyes that pretended to be disappointed became very gentle. His lips slowly curled into a smile that was hard to hide as he said, "Do you love me?" Luo Qingchen was stunned as her focused eyes became a bit surprised. Could it be that the second question is also this hard to answer? Luo Qingchen finally came back to her senses. She had been tricked by classmate Mo. Chapter 1745. Luo Qingchen dragged out her words before looking at him with a nod. What does mean?" Mo Zaichen softly pinched her little face. "Are you sure you don't want to answer properly?" Means It means what it says. Woo." Before she could finish, Mo Zaichen kissed her without any hesitation, leaving behind the taste of the milk in his mouth. This was their first kiss in a sense. It wasn't a light touch like before, but rather a lingering feeling. This was Luo Qingchen's first time feeling what it felt like for such a gentle man to kiss someone in such a domineering manner. Suddenly, she felt a bit of regret that she didn't answer properly. It seemed like there were some things that couldn't be deceived. Because she couldn't pass. She didn't know how long passed. She just knew that her brain was lacking in oxygen. Mo Zaichen slowly let her go and softly patted her back. He said with a helpless smile, "Your stamina really isn't good. Read less novels in the future and run more to train your body." "I won't." Luo Qingchen pouted her lips as she looked at him. "You're still looking down on me." Seeing her cute appearance, Mo Zaichen couldn't help touching her moist lips before saying with a faint smile, "That way after we get married, you'll be able to withstand the torment." Luo Qingchen looked at Mo Zaichen in front of her with wide eyes. She never dared to imagine that these little words of love would come from his mouth. "Are you certain you don't understand?" His lips curled slightly as he looked at her. "If you really don't understand, I can teach you step by step." "No." Luo Qingchen jumped up from the sofa and looked at him with a firm gaze. "I understand. I'll definitely read less novels and run more." He gave her a gentle and pampering smile. "Be good." She felt like she had been tricked again, but she didn't feel angry, rather she felt very warm. 10 days later, a city welcomed the largest wedding in history. When she was sitting in the dressing room, she received a long text from Jiang Yiliang. She said something like she couldn't forget, so Luo Qingchen directly deleted her number and put it on the blacklist. She should have already put Jiang Yiliang on the blacklist, so she didn't even need to think to know that Pei Dan Dan had added him back. She really liked to play with ambiguous people. Perhaps when the original owner was still alive, she had this kind of personality. It was just that God was on her side and no one noticed. Their wedding was very grand. When they stood in front of the priest and made their vows, Mo Zaichen said this. Some people say that on the day of the wedding, the bride can be a princess for a day. When she was pregnant, she could be the empress for 10 months, and then her life would be as ordinary as before. But I want to say that you will always be my princess. Clap, 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 clap. The audience applauded. Luo Qingchen looked at his face, and hearing his words, there was a faint mist that couldn't help appearing in her eyes. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, unable to hide his smile. Mo Zaichen slowly lifted the white veil for her, and placed a soft kiss on her forehead. She closed her eyes and revealed a sweet smile, as her heart was filled with emotions. Only people who had experienced parting would know how wonderful it was to meet again. Chapter 1746. Meeting was heaven's will and having it was luck. With the blessings of the rich circle, Luo Qingchen and Mo Zaichen completed the wedding of the century. She thought that she could go to Europe for her honeymoon, but she didn't know that the final exams were coming. Luo Qingchen finally reacted. She was still a student. Since she didn't study, other than math, she was in a state of cramming for all her other subjects. At this time, she naturally asked her husband for help. Although she had just turned 18, under the orders of her parents, they were already living in their own new house. The night before the exam, Luo Qingchen took the physics and chemistry syllabus into Mo Zaichen's study. He was reading a science fiction novel with a colorful cover, which was completely different from the style of books he used to read. That dear Mo Zaichen who was reading couldn't help revealing a faint smile. He put down the book and said, "What is it? Come here." He gently waved his hand and pulled her into his embrace. "Isn't there an exam tomorrow?" Luo Qingchen looked at him and tried her best to communicate with him in her mind. Mo Zaichen's brows twitched as he pushed the hair in front of her forehead behind her ear. So why aren't you sleeping yet?" "My meaning is that the exams are coming." Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and seriously looked at him. Mo Zaichen acted like he suddenly understood and gave a long "oh" sound. "My girl, you can do it." Mo Zaichen. She angrily jumped out of his embrace and looked at him as she said, "I used to think that your IQ and EQ were very high, but now it seems like you're just a wooden fish head." He couldn't even understand her obvious meaning. "I also have the same feeling when you say this." He threw the novel in his hand into the box beside him. "I won't read this type of novel in the future, it's easy to lower my EQ. You. Luo Qingchen bit her lip and forcefully patted the sofa. "Have you finished studying?" "I never study, it's my loss if I don't get full marks." Mo Zaichen looked at her round eyes and couldn't help revealing a pampering smile. "You already know about this." He was so angry that he exploded on the spot. "So what if you have a high IQ and a high EQ?" However, she could only blame herself for asking if he was done revising. "Rest early. If you don't get full marks, I'll laugh at you." Luo Qingchen got up with an unhappy face, but she didn't know that she was pulled into his arms again. Mo Zaichen took out a stack of test papers from the bookshelf behind him and looked at him as he said, "Memorize the answers here, and you should be able to hit 90%. In an instant, Luo Qingchen's expression changed from anger to shock. It had to be said that a person with a high IQ would always think of what she needed at the first moment. She would suddenly remember the promise he had made to her in front of her parents. He would prepare everything she needed for her. Every day, every minute, every second in the future. Staying by the side of such a man would always give her a sense of security. "Thank you, Teacher Mo." Luo Qingchen took the test papers from Mo Zaichen's hand and kissed his cheek. "If my results are good, I'll treat you to a meal." Mo Zaichen revealed a naughty smile as he looked at her. "Other than a meal, Can you add something else? Luo Qingchen heard this and her face turned red. She shook her head and said, "No." He wanted to trick her again, definitely not this time. Chapter 1747. Time flew by and the years were peaceful. Without knowing it, they had already been married for 2 years. From second year to first year, from Stars High School to Clear Dream University, they were still happy. Only, after going to university, Luo Qingchen felt a lot of pressure. After all, a city's university wasn't labeled as a noble school. You could apply as long as you had good grades. Therefore, there weren't many people who knew them at school, so Mo Zhe-chen became the male god of fans every day after entering university. On a sunny afternoon, she was wearing a white shirt with short sleeves and light blue jeans, drinking grapefruit and passion fruit juice with a depressed look. She was sitting by the window of the library, watching Mo Zhe-chen being surrounded by a group of fans. This was their 3rd day of school. Mo Zhe-chen took off his high school uniform and put on his private clothes, becoming the male god of everyone's hearts. Even if Ling Luo would tell those little sisters that he was taken every time she saw this scene. But it couldn't stop Mo Zhe-chen from shining. He became the only school hunk of Clear Dream University. Coo. Ling Luo, sitting in front of her, cleared her throat and looked at her. Do you want me to help you explain? Luo Qingchen played with the ice cubes and said with an angry look, No. I'll go myself. AI, the main character is coming out. Ling Luo looked at her with a smile, like there was a good play to watch. Luo Qingchen put her hands in her pockets and walked towards Mo Zhe-chen step by step. He had tactfully refused to take photos, but he couldn't stop the enthusiasm of his classmate. She even had the mission of being the school flower of Clear Dream University. She brought her sister group and bravely gave him a love letter. That school hunk Mo. A person wearing a water blue dress shyly lowered her head and angrily said to him, I don't know if you have a girlfriend, you wouldn't be in such a rush to reply to me. If you don't have a girlfriend, can I line up first? As soon as her voice fell, she looked up and her large eyes sparkled, acting cute to Mo Zhe-chen. Sorry, Ahem, Luo Qingchen, who was standing not far away, cleared her throat and said to her, Of course Mo doesn't have a girlfriend. When that person saw Luo Qingchen, her expression changed. She knew this person. Yesterday, she happened to see the two of them shopping in the supermarket at the school gate. Today, they even came to school together. They should have graduated from the same high school, but he didn't know if they were a couple. Since she wasn't absolutely sure that he had a girlfriend, as the campus belle, of course, she had to work hard for such a handsome boy. Oh! Hearing Luo Qingchen's words, the corner of the campus belle's mouth curved into a smile. That's good, I said that school hunk Mo should be a very discerning person. System, is she saying that I'm not good-looking? Isn't it obvious? At this moment, Mo Zhe-chen looked at her with a pampering gaze and softly took her hand. Why did you come out? It's hot outside. The school belle was slightly stunned, and her expression was a little awkward. This was her first time seeing Mo Zhe-chen speak so gently, but it wasn't to her. If I didn't come out, my heart would have been hot. Luo Qingchen gave a soft snort. There was a trace of pride in her voice as she looked at the school belle. Although school hunk Mo doesn't have a girlfriend, he has a wife. Chapter 1748. Luo Qingchen's voice wasn't soft or heavy, but everyone present should have heard it clearly. Mo Zhe-chen looked at her with a gentle pampering gaze. His right hand was around her waist, giving off an absolute aura. As the school beauty of Qingmeng, she naturally couldn't keep her face, but she couldn't say anything. She could only give a look to the little fat girl beside her. After all, she had been with the school beauty for many years, so with just a look, the little fat girl knew what the school beauty meant. AI, are all girls this open now? A girlfriend is a girlfriend, why do you have to call her a wife? The little fat girl rolled her eyes with a look of disdain. The school beauty saw this and immediately said, Fat girl, don't talk like this. People are all like this now, they're more open. After all, society is deteriorating, it's not good to talk about others like this. She sounded a bit delicate when she spoke. Luo Qingqian's head buzzed and she couldn't help shouting in her heart, "Damn! Little white flower, damn you!" These years had been too smooth. There was no one in Xingchen High School that didn't know her relationship with Mo Zaichen. No one dared to say anything about this golden couple in the noble circle. But Qing Meng was different. The university was like a small society. There were all kinds of people gathered together. Many of them weren't from a city, so it was normal that they didn't know about the wedding. After all, the noble circle was different from the commoner circle. But she wasn't happy to be insulted like this. After all, she had been through so many worlds and was quite skilled at insulting people. Open. Luo Qingqian gave a shrug and narrowed her cold eyes as she looked at the school beauty. Could it be that your dad is calling your mom his girlfriend? As soon as her voice fell, everyone was stunned. Only Mo Zaichen understood the meaning behind Luo Qingqian's words. The little fat girl looked at the school beauty, and after receiving the permission look, she immediately replied, "How can that be the same? They are a couple, aren't you? Don't you know if we are or not?" Luo Qingqian followed up seamlessly, "Oh. Based on your accent, you shouldn't be a local. Based on your clothes, you shouldn't be rich." "You? What do you mean?" The chubby girl was obviously not good at retorting. After being retorted with just a few words, her face instantly turned red, and she couldn't even speak clearly. She could only stammer. People nowadays are so open-minded. They're just boyfriend and girlfriend, yet they keep calling each other husband and wife. It sounds so disgusting. I mean it literally. It's because you're not a local that you don't know about the grand wedding between the Luo and Mo families in City A 2 years ago. Luo Qingqian gave a shrug and said with a chuckle, "The 7th of next month is my 2-year wedding anniversary with my husband, W." "What?" The school belle and the chubby girl looked at each other in shock. "Of course, I won't treat you." As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingqian took Mo Zaichen's hand and walked towards the library without looking back. From beginning to end, Mo Zaichen didn't say a single word. He just silently watched his wife's performance with a pampering look in his eyes. In his eyes, all he could do was to silently stand by his wife's side and be her guardian. He could only watch her domineering aura and watch her dazzling radiance. Of course, he also enjoyed seeing his wife jealous. Chapter 1749. For the rest of your life, you are the snow, you are the plain, you are the poor, you are the glory, you are the gentleness in my heart, and you are the gaze of my eyes. Mo Zaichen. My father was a person who was very devoted to love, but he never got the person he loved the most. So he hoped that I would become that kind of person. I've always thought that I was such a person, because before I entered the starry school, I had never liked anyone. At that time, I even doubted that I would like someone else, until I met Luo Qingqian. Actually, at first, I didn't know who she was. I just knew that she was a small streamer who liked to play games. She was my support at that time. Her skills weren't bad, but it wasn't at the peak. Although we were friends from the same team, I never noticed her. Until that night, when Ling Luo went to King of Glory, she played ADC all night. Her positioning was amazing, her damage was off the charts, and her skills were first class. It had to be said, even someone like me who had a deep understanding of the ADC class had to admit defeat. At that moment, I felt like my world had lit up and there was a special feeling in my heart that was causing trouble. That night, I hacked into her computer and carefully bypassed the firewall she set up to obtain her information. The daughter of the Luo family's Luo Gudu, one of a city's 4 great families, Luo Qingqian. I was going to come back 3 months later, so I decided to come back directly and attend the 4 great families' villa party. Actually, when I first saw her, I knew that she would be the only person I would like in my life. Some people were destined to be ruined with a single glance. Although I seemed to have a love rival called Jiang Iliang. I heard from my father that the Jiang family and the Luo family had an engagement. I said that it was someone I liked. I was a bit nervous when I asked her to dance at the villa party, since I didn't know what position Jiang Iliang had in her heart. But after the dance, I knew. There probably wasn't any position. Jiang Iliang brought another girl and I looked at her, but I didn't pay too much attention to her. I could feel her desire for status and money from her eyes. Although she hid it very well, I could still see it. Because I didn't like those eyes. But I would never have thought that such an ordinary person would end up being the one who almost brought our love to a dead end. Our time together has been smooth, every date, every meal. I watched as she faced off against Pei Dan Dan with great momentum. She could directly write down the answer without writing down the process. I exclaimed in surprise. Even under the gaze of thousands of people, her expression was still indifferent, neither arrogant nor impatient. When I was with her, I felt that all my focus was on her. Until the huge fire broke out. Although I was injured, she was safe and sound. I was glad that she wasn't hurt, but when I saw her open her eyes, there was an inexplicable feeling in my heart. The look in her eyes changed, even though she rarely spoke. But I always felt that she was no longer the same person. It was a very strange feeling that I couldn't explain. Although I didn't want to admit it, the voice in my heart kept telling me, I don't like her anymore. It was ridiculous that a fire could change my love for her. Chapter 1750. During that time, I was addicted to alcohol. When my father wasn't around, I would drown my sorrows in alcohol at home almost every day. Emotions were like strong wine, rising in your heart before it even entered your throat. It was a lonely winter's day, a stay that you couldn't ask for. I started to feel lost, started to panic, started to escape, and started to not know what I wanted, until I saw with my own eyes a girl in black open the door to my house with a password. At that moment I could feel my heart beating wildly. My heart was like a raging sea, turbulent and uneasy. She turned around, and it was an unfamiliar face. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyes were as clear as a spring. My first reaction was, I might have fallen in love with someone else. Although my heart kept resisting, my body was very honest. I wanted to get closer to her, I wanted to get closer to her. Even if this kind of approach was unbearable in the eyes of the world. I could see a hint of panic in her eyes, and the way her eyes trembled was so familiar. Suddenly, I wanted to treat her to a glass of wine. That night, it snowed heavily. We drank a lot, but neither of us got drunk. There were too many questions in my heart, but she said, I will give you the answer. I knew that some people were destined to fall in love at first sight. After that day, I couldn't sleep every night. I wanted to wait for the next day to come, and I wanted to drink with her. She said her name was Qingjiu, but I felt that this name didn't suit her. I preferred to call her girl. I had always resisted this feeling in the depths of my heart. But when I got close to her, I had a very special feeling. This feeling was exactly the same as when I saw Luo Qingchen at the resort. I started to sink into a terrifying darkness, slowly sinking. Until that night, when the snow was falling behind her, she walked towards me step by step and kissed me. She asked me, Do you want to apologize or confess? At that moment, I actually suspected that she was the Luo Qingchen I loved so much. I didn't know why, but her soul had moved to another person. This was my first reaction. It was so unbelievable. But even if I thought of it, I still didn't accept her confession. After all, confessions were for boys. How could I let a girl do it? I had to take care of the engagement before I could formally confess to her. Unexpectedly, an accident happened. Like a wizard who could predict the future, she foresaw Moon's accident. When we arrived at the platform, Yu was already being held hostage by Luo Qingchen. The whistle of the train echoed in our ears. Luo Qingchen pushed Yu off the platform with her own hands. When I wanted to rush over, all the sounds around me stopped. I couldn't seem to move, but I could vaguely hear her voice. She kissed my face, kissed my lips, she seemed to want to say goodbye, she seemed reluctant. But I was frozen on the spot, as if I had fallen into chaos, unable to do anything. Until the world was noisy again. She rushed to the track and threw Yu onto the platform. She was crushed by the train. At that moment my head buzzed. Not turning, not thinking. There was only darkness in front of him. It was as if there was only despair left in this world. I chased after the train, desperately running, I wanted to stop it. I wanted to exchange my life for hers. A great scientist once said, "When there is a speed that can surpass the speed of light, then it can travel through time and space." Chapter 1751. But I couldn't save her in the end. There was the smell of blood in the air, and my mind went blank at that moment, falling down like a zombie. Other than despair, there was only despair. But at that moment, there was a familiar voice that came from behind me. That voice's tone, and the way it paused were all so familiar. I could feel her choked-up voice as she called out my name in a trembling voice. At that moment, I couldn't move at all. I was pulled by her and tightly hugged. Was she Luo Qingchen? Or was it Qingjiu? Or was it the person I loved deeply from the beginning? I didn't know, but I was looking forward to it, waiting for her to tell me. No one knew how much my heart was trembling when she said the so-called answer in my ear. That feeling was like falling into an endless dark abyss. You thought you wouldn't be able to come out, but a ray of light shined on your face. But that was how I felt. I hesitated, but I used my feelings to overcome all difficulties. The person I loved the most was the same person from the beginning, that was the answer she told me. I believed it, I didn't doubt a single word. On the crowded platform, I came back to my senses and tightly hugged her, using all the strength I had in my life. I knew that I couldn't let her go, and I couldn't let her fall into danger. I was so greedy that I wanted to be by her side forever and ever. When the dust settled, I finally welcomed our wedding. Flowers, balloons, a wedding dress, and a diamond ring, not a single one was missing. On the eve of my wedding, my mood was completely different from before. I learned later that a person's face was just a bag of skin, the most important thing was the soul inside. If the soul wasn't right, my heart would desperately resist. At the wedding, I saw her smile and my heart strangely felt satisfied. I felt that I was very greedy. Even if I married her, even if she belonged to me in this life, I still wanted the next life. In the pure white wedding, other than the promise I made, I also made another promise in silence. That was, I hoped that Mo Zaichen could meet Luo Qingchen in every life. It didn't matter if she didn't like me, it was enough as long as I met her. Because I know I will definitely like her. This life is so difficult, but I still fell in love with her at first sight. No matter what her identity is, as long as her soul is Luo Qingchen, I will fall in love with her. She's my girl. She's a lifelong believer in love. The happiest days of his life were probably his university days. No one knows us. No one knows that we are a couple. We don't have Jiang Iliang by our side. I was secretly happy because no one could stop me from shining brightly. And I didn't want to shine so brightly to bring me popularity. I only wanted to attract her attention. Looking at her occasionally proud, jealous, and angry look, I felt like flowers were blooming in my heart. I liked to stand by her side and silently watch her drive everyone away. She always liked to hold hands and announce to everyone, "We are licensed drivers." Every time this happened, I would hold her waist and show off our affection. I said, "Dad said we're going home for dinner tonight." This is probably how I've been surrounded by happiness my entire life. With her, companionship is the longest confession and staying together is the warmest promise. Bai Qinghuan has nothing else to do, I'm waiting for the wind and waiting for you. Chapter 1752. When she opened her eyes, she was back in the chaos space. The last world's ending was very good, Mo Zaichen had guarded her for years and years. Although she wasn't willing to leave, she still felt very happy. Without knowing it, she had already passed 29 worlds. Actually, she was very nervous. Since the host and the male lead both died naturally and peacefully, you don't need to see the scene before your death. Alright. Luo Qingchen nodded. She didn't feel there was a need to see this. The following is a summary of the mission. Host, please properly look over it. Name, Luo Qingchen Plain Space. I'm shocked. I'm the evil female lead? Mission completion rate, 100%. There are currently 5 items in the experience space. May 5th, Exquisite Ring. 09 Section Moon Whip, Moon Glass Fan, Phoenix Dance Sword, Universal Medicine Box. Permanent Powers. Space and Time Freeze LV4, upgraded, exchange points, 12,000 base points, 40. The host's 30th mission panel is below. So, Luo Qingchen paused before saying, Special world? Yes. There's still no special powers? Yes. No system? Yes. Luo Qingchen closed her eyes as she became even more nervous. After that, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission grade. AU experience gained. 500. Permanent powers. Teleport. Female lead. Luo Qingchen male lead. Du Jiusheng supporting female lead. Lu Qi duo supporting male lead. Jin Rongfeng mission content. Return to 3 months before the female lead died and obtain the love of the male lead. Currently releasing memories. Host, please properly accept them. After accepting all the memories of the previous host, Luo Qingchen felt that this really was a special world. It was so special that there wasn't even the name Du Jiuxing in her memories. The previous host's job was also very special. She was an appraiser. In this fast-paced modern society, although the previous host's job was special, there were many rich people who came to her for help. The previous host's club was the Heart Reflection Studio. Although it was a small studio, there were over 100 people and the competition was very fierce. Of course, where there was competition, there was also opportunity. The previous host and the supporting female lead Lu Qi duo both received the opportunity to become the best appraiser. The boss gave them 2 missions to choose from. The first was the young master of S's biggest tycoon, Jin Rongfeng, and the second was the mysterious curator of Wang Chuan Library. In this stark contrast, the host and the supporting female lead both chose the young master of a corporation, Jin Rongfeng. Rumor had it that he was a Mr. G. His younger brother hired a love appraiser at a high price to prove whether his older brother liked men or women. The original owner would never have thought that this special profession would cost her her life. When the host was on a mission, she successfully captured Jin Rongfeng and became his girlfriend. The host found that Jin Rongfeng was a very meticulous person after interacting with him. This kind of meticulousness was so terrifying that he directly installed a bug in her phone. On the surface, he was polite, but in fact, there was a perverted demon living in his heart. But in order to become the best appraiser, the host didn't give up halfway. Instead, she carefully stayed with Jin Rongfeng until the supporting female lead Lu Qi duo finished her preparations and appeared at a banquet, successfully winning Jin Rongfeng's heart. After the previous host learned of this, although she was a bit unwilling, thinking of Jin Rongfeng's terrifying actions, she decided to withdraw from this mission. Chapter 1753. When Jin Rongfeng and Lu Qi duo were together, he would often send messages to the previous host. Most of the time, he was telling her how much he missed her. At that time, the previous host had already accepted another mission and was with another young singer. The previous few messages from Jin Rongfeng were ignored by the previous host. Until the dead of the night, after all, they had been together for more than 2 months. The previous host was a sentimental person and finally agreed to meet Jin Rongfeng. Unexpectedly, it was the day before the Ghost Festival, 11:30 p.m. The weather was very bad with rain and snow. Jin Rongfeng met the previous host at a villa in the suburbs. The location was very remote and the previous host searched for a long time before finding it. She didn't know that she would be killed. What was even more unbelievable was that there wasn't only one person who wanted to kill the previous host. There was also the supporting female lead, Lu Chi Duo. The memory in her mind was very scary. It was a sealed space that was a few thousand square meters. Every 5 meters there was a white transparent box. Inside there was a frozen woman's body. Some of them had their eyes closed while others had their eyes open. But one thing was for sure, they were all dead. Lu Chi Duo wore a dark red dress and Jin Rongfeng stood beside her. They seemed to be a perfect match. Their smiles were so eerie. The previous host's death was very strange. She could still remember the conversation between Jin Rongfeng and Lu Chi Duo before she died. It's been 600 years. We finally meet again. I was wondering why you look so familiar. So it's you. So what? He doesn't remember anything. No one will come to save you. The person who said the first sentence was Jin Rongfeng. The second sentence was Lu Chi Duo. The previous host died very miserably. Her eyes were dug out and the arteries on her wrist were cut. She slowly died in a transparent square ice coffin. She didn't know if she died from blood loss or freezing to death. Anyway, the previous host died just like that. She could hear Jin Rongfeng and Lu Chi Duo's crazy laughter. She gradually lost all consciousness. After organizing all the memories, Luo Qingchen could feel cold sweat on her back. Even her breathing was rapid. In the previous host's memories, although Lu Chi Duo liked to compete with her, she was still a normal citizen with a salary of 95,000. That terrifying gaze, it wasn't like her at all. Although she accepted the memories, her mind was filled with doubts. The memories were very messy. There was too much content in the final sentence between Jin Rongfeng and Lu Chi Duo that made her a bit confused. After 10 minutes of organizing, he came to the following conclusions. First, the original host met Jin Rongfeng and Lu Chi Duo 600 years ago, and their grudges were unclear. Second, he doesn't remember anything should be referring to the person who saved the original host 600 years ago. She felt that she was somehow familiar with this story, but she couldn't remember it. Not being able to ask the system was a troublesome matter, but one thing was for sure. His current situation was not safe. It was a big mission, it was a big was, it leveled, it was a big was, it was leveled was leveled, it was a big challenge. However, the only thing worth rejoicing over was, she could meet Du Jiuxing here. She always felt that she had wronged him for 2 lifetimes. She did not ask for a fairy tale ending, but only for a lifetime of peace. Back to 3 months ago, the original owner and Lu Chi Duo hadn't made their choice yet. Based on the current situation, as long as she didn't choose Jin Rongfeng, she should be safe for now. She could only take one step at a time. At least she had to find Du Jiuxing first. Chapter 1754. The next morning, Luo Qingchen woke up on time and went to work. Although this was a private company, it was very large and was very conspicuous in S-City's business circle. The original owner didn't have many friends in this company. She only had a good girl called Xia Qian, who was also a very good appraiser. However, she was a very immersive person. After appraising the other party's love, she would often fall in love with them. Early in the morning, she was talking to Luo Qingchen about the handsome guy she appraised yesterday. "Qing, you know. The client said he was a pedophile. I personally appraised him and the result was, absolutely not." Luo Qingchen chuckled and pressed the button for the elevator to the 7th floor. "You succeeded in one night?" "Of course," Xia Qian said confidently. "Those rumors are too unreliable." "Right, I heard that the boss will give you and Lu Qidua an ultimate mission today. Are you nervous?" "Today?" Luo Qingchen frowned, memories rolling in her mind. The system didn't treat her too badly. At least it didn't put her in danger in this special world. "You forgot." Xia Qian hooked her arm and said, "You have to work hard. I support you." Luo Qingchen nodded lightly, but her brows unconsciously wrinkled. At 1:30 in the afternoon, the big boss came to find her and Luchidwa. This was the first time she saw Luchidwa. She had a round face, heavy makeup, and a pair of 5 centimeters high heels. She had long straight hair and a strong aura. Her gaze lingered on her for 3 seconds before she retracted her gaze. Although Luchidwa's eyes were full of pride and arrogance, it was different from before she died. She didn't know why, she only knew that this feeling made her very uneasy. Chinchin Chidwa, you should know why I called you here today. Miss Fong pushed 2 blue documents on the table in front of them, the company's annual best appraiser selection. The final PK is between the 2 of you. Miss Fong, that's all because Ching let me win. It's all luck that I got to where I am today. Luchidwa's words sounded very modest, but her tone didn't sound modest at all. Instead, it gave off a feeling of being overbearing. Luo Qingchen shrugged and chuckled. Chidwa, you don't have to be modest. We were lucky to be able to get here. Her words were not directed at Luchidwa directly, but anyone who understood the meaning behind her words could tell that it was a form of sarcasm. Miss Fong saw that the atmosphere was a bit strange, so she hurriedly smiled and said, "This is an S-level commission mission. The client's information is confidential. You can choose from 2 people. You can choose the same person or different people." Luchidwa immediately took a step forward before Luo Qingchen. She opened the file on the left and shook her head in disdain before putting it down. In the next second, he opened the file of the person on the right. Luo Qingchen, who was standing not far away, could instantly feel the change in her expression. Her pair of dark eyes were filled with a little bit of starlight. "Miss Fong, I choose to accept this mission." Luchidwa picked up the documents and quietly hugged them to her chest. She then turned to Luo Qingchen and said, "Qing, you can choose the other one. It shouldn't be too difficult." Chapter 1755. The atmosphere back then was very awkward, but since Sister Fong had said it first, they could choose the same person to complete the mission. In the end, Luchi Duo had no choice but to share Jin Rongfeng's file with her. This was probably the line that drew the line of tragedy. What she needed to do now was stay away from Jin Rongfeng and choose the first person. Unhumph. Luo Qingchen narrowed her cold eyes as she looked at her. "This is my first time seeing someone choose first and then say it's easy." As soon as her voice fell, she was too lazy to look at Lu Chi Duo's expression. She picked up the first blue file and looked at Sister Fong. "I'll choose this." "You? Can you take a look?" Sister Fong was very surprised by her choice. After all, Luo Qingchen wasn't the kind of person who would casually accept missions, but today was different. "No need," she said with a shrug. "I've always had the strength to let others choose first." "You?" Luchi Duo's expression was a bit unhappy. She wanted to argue back, but she felt that she was in the wrong. It wouldn't be good if she ended up being called taking advantage of others. She just gave a shrug. "Whatever you say, we'll talk with our strength." Unhumph. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes as she replied, "Very good." Taking the blue file, Luo Qingchen returned to her office. In fact, she was looking forward to it. After all, this was the dividing line between choices. She took a deep breath and opened the file. There were 3 large words written on it, Du Jiusheng. Without knowing why, when she saw these 3 words, her lips couldn't help curling into a faint smile. She felt that in this strange and dangerous world there was a touch of warmth. "I'm back, Du Jiusheng." She pursed her lips and muttered, "This time, it's really my turn to walk towards you." Looking down, there wasn't much information on Du Jiusheng. There was a picture of him wearing a black coat and some simple personal information. Name: Du Jiusheng. Age: 21. Job: head librarian of Wang River Library. Favorite color: black. Appraisal content: please appraise if he will fall in love with someone else. After seeing Du Jiusheng's information, Luo Qingchen instantly understood why Lu Chi Duo chose Jin Rongfeng without any hesitation. One was the young master of the biggest tycoon in S City, while the other was the director of the library. As a love appraiser, even though they couldn't get into character, if they met a sugar daddy, they could get into character and win him over. That would be the perfect ending. She vaguely remembered that a few of the original owners' peers had married into rich families and left the profession of love appraisers to become rich madams. Luo Qingchen carefully put Du Jiuxing's photo away in her pocket. When she returned home that night, she spent a lot of time searching for information about Jin Rongfeng. The more she found out, the more uneasy she felt. Jin Rongfeng was the only son of the richest man in S City, Jin Zun. Not only was he not a playboy, but he was also a very kind and smart person. At the age of 17, she obtained a double degree and established her own charity organization to help many people in need. But this kind of development only knew that he was 18 years old. On the day of his 18th birthday, she heard that there was a red meteor shower in S City, and the densest place was on the roof of the Jin family's villa. Since then, it was like Jin Rongfeng had changed into a different person. Not only did he dissolve his charity organization, he even left the university he was studying at. Chapter 1756. There were many reports about him. After all, he was considered half a public figure. Some people said that he was like this before. His genius brain and love for charity were all fake. Others said that he was possessed. Luo Qingchen found some photos of Jin Rongfeng doing charity before he was 18 years old. White shirt and bright smile. He was completely different from the vampire-like demon in the original owner's memory. With such a contrast, she had no choice but to believe the latter's rumors. She was afraid that she had been possessed. Possessed? Was it related to what happened 600 years ago? If he was possessed, did it mean that this plane wasn't a normal plane, but a plane with special techniques or abilities? With such doubts, she turned off the computer. She felt that there was a bigger story that she didn't know. The original owner didn't know either. The next day, she slept until noon. It was probably because she thought too much about what happened last night that she couldn't sleep. After all, she had nothing in this plane. When she couldn't use violence to solve problems, she could only use her brain. She hurriedly ate lunch and found the so-called Wanchuan library. Luo Qingchen's first impression of this library was that it was antique. There were potted plants and ancient decorations outside the library. There was an automatic revolving door inside the library. It was very high-tech. This was her first time in this library. The original owner hadn't been here before either. There were many people coming and going. She took a deep breath and couldn't help but feel nervous. Takshu walked into the library. There was a faint sandalwood scent in the air. When she stood in the main hall, she was stunned. There was a waterfall pavilion and a painting on the fake mountain. No matter if it was the setting or the items, they were all antique. This library called Wanchuan was simply too amazing. "Hello, how can I help you?" A boy wearing a light pink sweater walked up and looked at her. "Do you need to buy books or find someone?" Lan Fan looked over Luo Qingchen and his lips couldn't help curling into a smile that no one could see. Just now, he accidentally saw the words, "Heart Reflection," on the blue document in Luo Qingchen's hand. She should be the appraiser that he spent a lot of money to hire at the Heart Reflection Club a few days ago. As expected, spending a lot of money really made a difference. She was really good-looking. If such a good-looking girl couldn't win Brother Xing's heart, then he was sure that Brother Xing didn't love women or men. He was the only alien in this world. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and looked at the young man in front of her. He had red lips and white teeth. He looked very delicate. She was wearing a pink sweater and looked like a celebrity. She had a feeling that he was here for her. Furthermore, this feeling was very strong. "May I ask, is the manager of this library, Mr. Du Jiuxing, here?" Luo Qingchen tentatively asked this. Little did they know, yes. He's here every day. He basically doesn't go out during the day. Lan Fan looked at her with a smile and said, "How should I address you, miss?" "Yes, my surname is Luo Qingchen." At this moment, Luo Qingchen was 90% sure that the person in front of her was the client. Otherwise, who would take her to see Du Jiuxing like this? Miss Luo, this way please. The elevator stopped on the third floor and it was much quieter. The wall paintings in the corridor were quite old, so if they weren't fakes, they wouldn't be cheap. You brought an outsider up? When she came out of the elevator, there was a familiar voice that came from the end of the corridor. Luo Qingchen felt her heart couldn't help skipping a beat. Her eyes turned red and even her fingers couldn't help trembling. Chapter 1757. There was a faint chill in the air, making it feel like they were in a land of ice and snow. It was colder inside than outside. Big brother, this Miss Luo said she was looking for you, so I brought her up. Lan Fan desperately played with Luo Qingchen as he signaled with his eyes. Luo Qingchen nodded before saying in a clear voice, "Hello, I saw a sign at the entrance of the library for night workers, so I wanted to ask if you're still hiring?" Lan Fan saw that Luo Qingchen reacted this quickly and couldn't help giving a satisfied nod. As expected of an outstanding love appraiser. This time, he could finally see if his big brother Xing could be as calm, composed, and indifferent towards the mysterious emotion known as love as anything else. Gotcha. The sound of a door being opened slowly came from the end of the hallway. Luo Qingchen held her breath as she looked in the direction of the sound without turning. A person wearing a black coat like a royal came out, with a golden badge on his chest. The badge was the same shape as the mark on his ear. Luo Qingchen let out a long sigh of relief as she watched Du Jiuxing walk in her direction. His face didn't change at all. His eyes were cold and his face was like a sculpture. Those deep eyes seemed like they had been silent for thousands of years. Looking at them, they were very deep. But without knowing why, she could feel that when Du Jiuxing's eyes fell onto her, there was a faint sparkle in his eyes. Lan Fan on the side looked like he was watching a play. He would never know just how nervous Luo Qingchen was at this moment. Du Jiuxing narrowed his eyes and coldly asked, "Does your family live nearby?" "Yes." Du Jiuxing softly replied before giving the black envelope to her, "There are the details of the job inside, you can take a look. If you feel there's no problem, you can make the final call." As soon as his voice fell, he turned to walk towards the room at the end of the hallway, never looking back. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows, feeling a bit disappointed. "Love never left, but I remember, you forget." Little did she know that Lan Fan, who was beside her, was extremely agitated. It was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He wanted to scream out loud, but he tried his best to hold it in. His face was red from holding it in. Luo Qingchen waved the black envelope in front of him and said, What's wrong?" In the next second, Lan Fan quickly pulled her into the elevator. When the elevator reached the second floor, he looked at her excitedly and said, "Damn! Insight Master is indeed different." Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly. She looked at him with some confusion and asked, "What do you mean?" "My brother. My brother. My brother. He actually gave you an envelope." Lan Fan gave her a thumbs up and said, "He didn't even see you and didn't even ask you anything before giving you an envelope." When Luo Qingchen heard this, she felt an inexplicable joy in her heart, but she replied, "Didn't he just ask?" "Ask what?" "Ask me. If my family lives nearby?" "Poochie," Lan Fan said with a chuckle, "there are still many empty high-class apartments beside the Wanchuan Library." "What?" Luo Qingchen's eyes opened wide. "You mean that he is planning to provide accommodation for me and my staff?" God! What did she just say? Live close. Chapter 1758. Lan Fan looked at her regretful face, crossed his arms and smiled. "It's okay, you can mention it to brother after you finish reading the contents of the envelope. Since he already gave you the envelope, he won't reject it. You speak as if this envelope is a pass." Luo Qingchen shook the envelope in her hand lightly. It had a very familiar fragrance. "Of course. Lan Fan pointed at the envelope in her hand. Don't think that Wang Chuan Library is so big. There are less than 10 people including me and brother. Most of them were brought back by brother. Their personalities are not bad, only one is more annoying. When Lan Fan said this, his face was full of unhappiness. Brought back people, then who are you? Me. Lan Fan shrugged. I'm the big boss of this library's title deed and house deed. Luo Qingchen sized him up and said in disbelief, Rich second generation? She didn't know that Lan Fan instantly laughed. Actually, these were all left to me by my grandfather, and he told me to wait for one person's arrival. That person is my brother Xing. Luo Qingchen nodded in understanding. So it's like this. Ding dash, when they reached the restaurant on the second floor, it was afternoon tea time. Lan Fan was very enthusiastic and ordered a lot of things for her. Enjoy the food, I believe that you'll definitely be able to handle my brother. Lan Fan leaned close to her ear and whispered, You should already know that I'm the client. Luo Qingchen drank the sweet dew and smiled awkwardly. It's very obvious. This doesn't matter. Let me tell you, I just said that I especially hate a woman. Before Lan Fan finished speaking, a wind chime sounded at the door. A woman with short hair and brown eyes, wearing a black leather jacket, walked in. Her gaze was very cold. She glanced at Lan Fan and looked away in disdain. It's her, it's her. Lan Fan pushed Luo Qingchen's arm and snorted. She came to our library 3 years ago. She didn't stay there normally. She liked to go to brother's room and knock on the door. She's so cold and arrogant. Just looking at her makes me annoyed. Luo Qingchen looked her short-haired daughter up and down. She seemed to have noticed something and suddenly turned her head to look at her. Her eye makeup was very thick, and her dark red lipstick and sharp eyes gave people a very uncomfortable feeling. What you said makes a lot of sense. Luo Qingchen retracted her gaze. I raised my eyebrows and asked, What's her name, and what does she do in your library? Lan Fan seemed to have found a kindred spirit. He snorted softly and said, I only know that her name is Hong Yu. As for what she does, she seems to be an ordinary employee. Luo Qingchen's right hand habitually tapped on the table. She looked at Hong Yu's back thoughtfully, and a faint light flashed in her eyes. When he returned home that night, he took a shower and sat in front of the computer to search for apartments near Wang Chuan Library. After all, the previous host's home was too far from the library, so she was too embarrassed to ask Du Jiuxing for a dorm. It was always better to be prepared than to find a good place first. After finding a place to stay, she opened the black envelope with an inexplicable sense of expectation. His handwriting hadn't changed and each word was hit with the right amount of strength. There was the smell of ink that came from the letter. Taking a deep breath, she felt like she was falling into a memory. The contents of the letter were very simple. The working hours were from 8 to 12 and the job was to take care of the books. The salary was very high. Chapter 1759. At the bottom of the letter was Du Jiuxing's phone number. Luo Qingchen picked up her phone and dialed it. At the same time, in the study, Du Jiuxing stood in front of the window and narrowed his deep eyes. There was Luo Qingchen's information on the A4 paper in his hand. 20 years old, an appraiser. Suddenly, there was a strange feeling of loss in his heart, but there was also an endless expectation. It was very complicated. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. He raised his right hand and there was a faint blue light around the doorknob as the door slowly opened. What are you busy with? Hong Yu came in with several black cards and looked at him as she said, There was a car accident on North Bridge Street tonight and the list of 7 deaths has been released. Du Jiuxing softly replied. He put on the netherworld ring on the table and his eyes were cold. The next second, his phone rang. He narrowed his eyes and there was a faint blue light around his phone. The string of unfamiliar numbers turned into 3 words. Luo Qingchen. It seems like you're busy? Hong Yu looked over and saw the word Luo. Actually, she didn't feel good in her heart. She never thought that the Forgotten River Library would take in a person. It had to be known, in this library, other than Lon Fan, there wasn't a single person. You go first, I'll come later. Du Jiuxing picked up the phone and instantly disappeared from the room. Hong Yu knit her brows as she looked very unhappy. That Du Jiuxing, who was always cold and didn't care about normal people, why was he so special to this person this time? Hey! There was a cold voice that came out when the call connected. Luo Qingchen's heart skipped a beat as she became a bit nervous. Hello. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and said to the other side, I came to the library this morning to apply for a job, Luo Qingchen. I wonder if Mr. Du still remembers me? She always felt that when she met this kind of cold person, it was easy to talk to him. It was a good thing that he was Du Jiuxing. Although he didn't have any memories, he was still the previous Du Jiuxing. Have you considered it? Du Jiuxing softly replied, If it's too late, we can still discuss it. In fact, when he said this, even he found it hard to believe. Could it be that she possessed a special charm just because she was an appraiser? Well, no, I read the contents of the envelope and felt that it was very suitable for me. Luo Qingchen gently blinked and said, I want to ask. You can come to work tomorrow. Du Jiuxing cut her off at the same time, surprising her. Could he know what she was thinking? How is this possible? Du Jiuxing also felt that he had answered too quickly. Actually, it wasn't that he knew what Luo Qingchen was thinking, but there was a strange expectation in his heart that was very strong. You. Luo Qingchen smiled and said, It seems that Senior Du has the ability to predict the future. Although she really wanted to ask him how he knew what she was going to say, she decided against it. After all, she would have many chances to meet the Du Jiuxing of this world in the future. Du Jiuxing's brows relaxed as he calmly said, Because we've always lacked people. Lacked people? Was he teasing her? Du Jiuxing felt that saying this was a bit funny, but when he heard her soft laugh, there was an inexplicable panic.